This is John Krohn, who's with the National Association of Clean Water Agencies.
Yeah, and thank you, Chris, for inviting us here today. Really happy to be here to share a little bit of what we've been doing on this issue, supporting the Department of Environment and DC Water, who's one of our members. Just real briefly, I'm sure this is probably the first time some of you have been exposed to our organization, so I just want to take a moment to tell you who I am and where I'm from. NACWA stands for the National Association of Clean Water Agencies. We are the national advocacy organization for POTWs. We have about 300 members, including a lot of local utilities such as DC Water, Fairfax Water, and the Washington Suburban Sanitary Commission. So, you know, this is an issue that's near and dear to our heart because, as Christoph alluded, the district has a significant presence here. And so if they don't pay that 20%, then who does? Well, we all do if we live here. And from our perspective, being a national organization, what was really troublesome from our perspective was the precedent that this decision could set if it, you know, stayed what it was in April, as we're not going to pay this. We deem it a tax. So we wanted to hit the ground running right away on this issue. And this isn't the first time this issue has come up on a national level. Cincinnati struggled with this before, and there have been other high-profile cases that have worked their way through the courts to some degree or another. But after the April decision, we went into action and we wanted to poll our membership and see, you know, is this a problem just acutely affecting Washington, or is it a more chronic issue? And we found that the issue of fee versus a tax for these stormwater charges, often taking the form of an impervious surface area fee, is an issue in at least 10 states. You know, DC Water has one of the, and DDOE has one of the potential biggest issues as far as the numbers of it, followed only by King County, Washington, out in Seattle in the Puget Sound region. So we got to work right away on resolving this, you know, what we perceive to be a misinterpretation of the fee. So we worked with DC Water and approached Congress, because this is really a congressional issue in a lot of ways. Again, as Christoph alluded to before, the Clean Water Act in Section 313 exempts the federal government from sovereign immunity, which is the claim that we are the federal government and therefore we don't pay taxes. And it says, you know, for, you know, clean water activities, the federal government should pay their fair share, just like any individual organization or business. And so we worked with Senator Cardin to have legislation introduced in the Congress, both a standalone bill, which is S3481, as well as language included in the Chesapeake Clean Water and Ecosystem Restoration Act, which is S1816. And essentially what that language does is just make minor modifications to Section 313. You know, we've seen a lot of talk about thousands of pages of legislation recently. This bill is succinct. It's literally one page. And what it says is, you know, included in these fees are stormwater management fees. And then it says one other critically important thing as well, that these fees cannot be deemed a tax and are not subject to sovereign immunity claims by the federal government. So where are we in that process with that bill? But more importantly, we're working with DC Water. We also were successful in bringing the issue to the top of the attention of Delegate Norton. She was already on it. We came up to her and talked about the issue, and their office introduced companion legislation, HR 5724. So that it was, you know, the initial effort that we pursued. You know, to this point, the standalone bill specifically dealing with this issue solely has garnered bipartisan support. We find that the message that we're carrying right now is one of equity, a polluter pays discussion. You know, if you have real estate in the district or anywhere else in the country and there's a significant portion of impervious surface, well, then you should pay to manage that stormwater, especially as the federal government is working to correct this huge problem that's impacting our waterways and requiring more of municipalities. They should step up to the plate as well. You know, this bipartisan support was noticed in a markup of the standalone bill and the Chesapeake Bay bill back in July. Senator Inhofe, who's the ranking member of the Environment and Public Works Committee, said, you know, I fully support this effort. For me, it really gets at the heart of the unfunded mandate discussion. We're putting all these burdens on our municipalities who have a limited source of funds to work with. We need to give them the support that they need to meet these requirements, as Christoph alluded to. So both of the Senate bills have been marked up by full committee. We're all very activist type people. I'm sure we've all been following the U.S. government. I'm sure we all know that the Senate hasn't really done much as a body this year. A lot of things have just kind of languished there and not moved forward. So neither of these bills have seen the attention of the floor in the Senate. The House bill has yet to be considered by committee because this issue popped up pretty late in the session. It was April when GAO came out with their initial determination. By the time everybody was able to corral their wagons, we were looking at June, July, and well, it was an election year. That caused some issues too because everybody goes and works on campaigns. But we're now currently pursuing two separate opportunities for passage with both the standalone bill and the Chesapeake Bay bill, which is probably one of the top priorities of Senator Cardin. But there's some complications between the two, and I won't get too far into the weeds. But the larger bill, the Chesapeake Bay bill, has been reviewed by the Congressional Budget Office, which needs to review every piece of legislation that goes through a congressional committee, and has made it out no problems at all whatsoever. The smaller bill, the standalone bill that focuses only on our Section 313 fix, has been reviewed by the Congressional Budget Office, but since it will result in an additional payment that the federal government will have to undertake, it requires a score. It's important to have that score so you can have the offset, because under PAYGO rules, we can't add to the deficit. Everything's got to be paid for. So that's the outline. So with that construct in place, the first strategy we're looking to do is to work with a larger coalition that is supporting the passage of a consolidated water, lands, and wildlife package. So throughout the 111th Congress, a lot of bills have passed the Environment and Public Works Committee, the Senate Commerce Committee, and the Natural Resources Committee dealing with land transfers in the West, individual ecosystem restoration bills for different, high-value watersheds in the United States, and none of these things have been able to make the floor. So Senator Cardin, working with a number of others, is trying to package these bills into one item for consideration during the lame duck session, which will begin in mid-November. The coalition is meeting every week. So long as the items are able to be passed in an uncontroversial way, it should be a good contender for lame duck consideration, depending upon the scope that session has. The Chesapeake Bay bill obviously has met some contention and pushback from the agricultural community, so it remains to be seen whether or not we'll be able to include that in a lame duck session. Because they just as recently as last week sent a letter saying this is the worst thing since sliced bread, Congress shouldn't pass it, and we were all shocked at that. So if that doesn't move forward, if this larger lands, wildlife, and water package is unable to move forward due to that opposition, Congress, as you know, is just politically spent right now. The desire to take on really high-profile issues that will engender a lot of controversy is next to nothing. We do believe that there is also an opportunity to move this standalone bill. And we're working with Senator Cardin to try to move that process through concurrently as we're working to build support for the lands, water, and wildlife package. The standalone bill, as we said, will require an offset. We don't know what that offset would be yet, so that is a little sticking point in implementation there. But it does bode well for us that Senator Inhofe supports this, and Senator Cardin, who is the chair of the water subcommittee in the EPW committee, supports it as well. We've had initial discussions with majority and minority staff and the appropriations committees, because that is the bill, the omnibus bill, if there is one, that it would eventually be tacked to. And we believe that there is about a 50% opportunity to have one of these items move forward during the lame duck session as it relates to this specific issue. In the event that this doesn't move forward, strictly from a legislative perspective, we've already spoken with, Senator Cardin and Delegate Norton. Both are very interested in continuing to push this issue forward next year. It seems to be a continued priority for both of them. For Senator Cardin, obviously the impacts on the Chesapeake Bay are significant, and for Delegate Norton, that's a big chunk of change that the district won't get. So they're going to be increasingly involved in the effort if need to be next year. And we've also briefed the Republican staff on the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee on this issue well before the election. Again, this is one of the few issues right now that really has the ability to attract both parties, just given the environmental impacts on the Democratic side, and the unfunded mandate issue on the Republican side. So if we don't get a legislative fix this year, we maintain hope for next year, and we're also working with DC Water and DDOE on possible legal next steps as well.